Hello my creative critters, and welcome to Sketching with Sarah. I'm Sarah, and this week's video is part 2 of turning a Dollar Tree frame into a cute DIY frame painting. If you haven't seen part 1, I'll have a link in the description as well as a side card here, so you can come along with me to the Dollar Tree and watch the process of me planning and prepping everything before the painting part. The painting part is definitely the fun part, so thank you for bearing with me, and let's get painting. After I got the digital drawing printed and taped to the glass of the frame, I started painting what would be the most in front in this drawing. In this case, it was the lightest spikes on the belly of my hedgehog critter. I did have Procreate open, which is the digital program that I used to create the illustration that I printed out for this one, and I had it open to help guide me on what to paint next. Since this drawing was created in layers on there, so I revealed a layer at a time in order on the digital file, then I painted that, and then went back to Procreate, revealed the next layer, and painted that one, and I kept going like that, back and forth, just to stay on track. In a way, this painting on glass process is a lot like painting layers on a digital illustration too. I had originally planned these lighter spikes to be painted after I flipped the glass over as details on the front of the glass to add even more dimension, but I was just so excited to start that I forgot, and in the end it all ended up working out better than if I had waited to paint these spikes on the other side, but you'll have to stay tuned for that. So the paintbrushes that I got at the Dollar Tree were small, but not nearly small enough to get the level of detail in the spikes that I needed. I am a control freak when it comes to my art, and you best believe I needed them tight, sharp, crispy looking spikes, okay? So I ended up using some brushes from the set of my detail brushes that I used in a lot of my painting ceramics and tiny fine details on other paintings. I did use some of the Dollar Tree brushes for larger areas that didn't need to be as precise though, so I did get some use out of them too, don't worry. I always have links to any supplies that I use in any of my videos down in my description if you're curious to check out exactly what I'm using. So by the time I finished the light spikes, I was basically out of that tube of acrylic that I had already started previously, and so I dug out some different quick dry acrylic paints as well as my big Hobby Lobby bottle of white acrylic paint to mix with. I talked about this in part 1, but the whole inspiration of this video was from Emily Artful's new series here on YouTube, where she takes old things and turns them into creative pieces of art. And for this video, I'm basically treating her video as a tutorial and creating my own painted frame. Huge shout out to Emily Artful, and if you're not following her and you're watching little me somehow, you gotta go watch her videos. I'll have her socials linked below too. So thank you, Emily, for inspiring me enough to want to get out of bed on a rainy day to go to the Dollar Tree and create art. The next layer was basically covering the spikes that I just painted and adding spikes on the outer edge of the shape too. Hedgehogfishes? Hedgehogfishes? You know what? It's a made-up word anyway, so who cares what the plural is? But anyway, these creatures are part pufferfish, and pufferfish have rows and rows of spikes around their whole body, so I thought this was a nice simple way to show that with the layers of shapes with the spikes. The next closest things to the front that I had to paint next were the ears, eyes, little tooth poking out, his nose, and other little details in the face like the mouth line. I really took my time and built up those shapes with the paint and made sure to do multiple coats to make sure that it was an opaque layer on the glass. Now with the fine lines in the front fin, let me tell you, I was getting hungry or something because I was definitely shakier than usual and the lines were not as thin as I wish they were, but I did my best, literally did my best just to completely destroy them later on, but you'll see how that happens soon enough. Which, by the way, thank you for watching all the way through so far. If you're liking this video, don't forget to hit that little like button down there. It really helps me out. So since I mixed the paint for the fin lines, I thought I would try to do the other fin lines too, but then I realized that I wanted the spikes from the body to be in front of those back fins, like the tail and the top and bottom fins, if that makes sense. But since I already mixed the line color already and I didn't want it to dry up and go to waste, so I carefully left spaces where I wanted the spikes to be in front. It's kind of hard to explain, but I guess you'll kind of see how I left little gaps where you can see the spikes from the print underneath it. Then I painted the darker stripes on the fins that went vertically, and then the middle striped color over the whole fin to make sure it was a nice and opaque opaque layer, and while I was covering those thin lines with the vertical stripe colors, I could feel the paint from the lines moving, but I think I was in denial, so I just kept going, and I could have sworn that those lines were dry, so I just thought maybe it was normal for it to feel that way, like a dingus. So I just kept going, and I mean, it can't be that bad, right? I mean, I did end up doing some damage control on the front of the glass once I flipped it over, so I guess we'll have to see how that ended up working out, and you'll see my struggle later on. Also, I did film a TikTok and Instagram reel alongside this process, which if you haven't seen it, for sure check it out. My socials are in the description too. But I did one satisfying stroke on the upper half of his body, and I filmed that for the reel on TikTok, which is why you didn't see it being swiped on this horizontal type format for YouTube in this video. But after I filmed the vertical video for the TikTok and reel, I went back to painting, and I didn't really like the shade that I mixed. I felt like it was too light and not saturated enough, so I mixed a whole new color and went right on top of it, not realizing that you would still see that lighter color first. And I didn't even think about it and realize what I'd done until after I flipped it over after painting the back. All this will make more sense later, I promise. I painted so many spikes, and it was kind of nice to be able to just mindlessly paint over them. I mean, I already did all the work as far as planning out how the drawing is gonna look when I did the illustration digitally and printed it out. So now I'm just basically tracing over and painting it again on the glass. I love listening to podcasts like Dark History with Bailey Sarian and her Murder Mystery Monday videos, and also Chris Clemens' podcast Unhinged, and I basically wait to watch my other favorite content on YouTube for when I have to paint or draw for a video or a commission or whatever, because it really gets me even more motivated to get going and create content for you guys. I won't lie, some days I wake up and I just go to work and I come home and I feel like just going to bed or taking a nap. And let me tell you, some days I really could use that extra motivation of hearing about a true crime or having a laugh with Chris Clemens. And I feel like whatever you need to do to help you get stuff done is totally worth it. Even if it means seeing that notification that one of your favorite content creators is posting something and not clicking it. So like I said, I like to save my favorite content as a reward while I work on stuff, or even work out or wash dishes or do laundry. And by doing that, I start to look forward to doing those things. I mean, I finally got around to listening to all of the Harry Potter books for the first time the year I graduated college. I got all my final illustrations and my portfolio done all at the same time. So that's my little tip for you that no one asked for, but I hope it helps someone out. As I was finishing up the last few layers, I took the tape off and looked at the other side, and the first thing I noticed is how not opaque those fins are, and also other parts of it. So I tried to add more and more layers of those colors on the back, and kept referring back to the front after it dried to see if I needed more layers. And after that back and forth, I figured I'd just cover the whole back of it in a generous layer of a brown color to give whatever streaky bits that were left a little unity with that same brown behind it all. So after I let that final coat dry on the back properly, I flipped it over and started to try and figure out how to fix what I didn't like. First thing I noticed is how not crispy those spikes were, even though I carefully painted them to be spiky and crisp on the back. After layering all the colors on top of it, and because acrylics are such a raised medium, ended up fuzzying up and making them not look as straight, if that makes sense. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. So after seeing that, I knew I wanted to tighten up all of the spikes, at least the ones that really needed it. I also noticed that the eye wasn't dark enough against the brown behind it, and I just had to do something about how those front fin lines just got completely pushed out of whack. So I started by adding a lighter cream color to the lightest spikes to add an even sharper look while also having another layer of dimension, since now I am painting on the front of that glass. So there's that space of the thickness of the glass, you know? Then I added more brown to that paint and added more of those spike caps with the lighter brown on the other spikes on the rest of the body, here and there. It was kind of a struggle for me not to do every single one of them, but I think since I intentionally didn't outline all of the spikes, I think it adds a little bit more dimension too, because you see that some of the spikes are pushed even more back because they're painted on the back of the frame. And already I was really excited about how, well, spiky he was turning out. Then I got my black acrylic color and realized that the paint that I had is actually more of a really dark gray and didn't have that punch that I needed for the eyes to make it dark enough to stand out. So I added a different black acrylic paint that was actually part of the set from the original brown color tube that I used earlier on. And I used that black paint to mix in with the brown to give it that even more darker tone against the brown that was underneath it. And after that was all sorted out, it was time to tackle that disaster that was the front fin. So at first I thought I would try and work with it and embrace it and how the lines got squished up. So I traced those curves with a darker grayish, brownish fine liner to try and make them at least look a little intentional. But I couldn't just leave it with just the lines there because it ended up looking like weird strings on the fin, since the front of the glass is raised from the paint on the back of it, obviously, so it just looked off. So I tried to add more shapes of the lighter brown to fill it in a little bit more, and did the same with the darker brown stripes too. Then I hated it, so I just decided to completely cover it. The nice thing about acrylics is that you do have the ability to cover everything up pretty easily because it is such an opaque medium. It is more raised once it dries, so you kind of have to be careful on how thin and even you have your coats on. And if you look really closely, you can kind of tell all the mistakes as bumps on the fin after I painted over it, but from far away you can't tell, and it's pretty minor anyway. And since it is more raised, it ends up working out even better because it is the frontmost thing in the drawing too, so it all works out in the end. Then I moved to the other fins, and at first I didn't want to do anything with those since they were already in the back and behind all of those spikes. But after adding the fine lines in the front, I got a little carried away and did the same thing to line the other fins and the tail too. Then I went even crazier and started outlining the nose and added fine lines around strategic other parts of the silhouette and spikes here and there, so it was a little bit more balanced around the whole thing and not just outlined by the tail and the nose, for example. And before I reveal the final painting, I want to show you how I decided to hang it, because it is a frame after all, and the end goal for this anyway was to display it, so I might as well show you how I ended up doing that. So on the backing of that Dollar Tree frame, I was able to use the looped hangers on the back, and it was nice because there were two of them if you wanted it to be horizontal or vertical. So it was nice I had two of them to put on each corner of the frame, and since this is a cheap Dollar Tree frame after all, it was pretty easy to just tear them off. The backing was basically like a thin cardboard. Then I flipped my painting over and used a simple thumbtack to poke through the eyelets of the hanging bit to attach it to the back of the frame. You could probably even find these push pins at the Dollar Tree. I just had some laying around. I figured why not just use these. You can use super glue or E6000 or any other type of really strong glue, like Gorilla Glue even. But like I said, I had a ton of these tacks, and since this is a Dollar Tree frame, it was really easy to poke through to stick the pins in without any glue or nails. By the way, all of this was just me eyeballing it. I didn't even measure any of it to make sure it was even or anything, but it was close enough for me, and it doesn't really matter because I'm gonna have a chain, so whatever I needed to do to straighten it out once I put it on the wall, I can just use the chain to adjust it. So that wasn't a huge deal. Then I poked a third tack on the back of the frame on that bottom in the middle so that it would sit evenly on my wall and not swing down towards the bottom of it, since the other tacks are raised from the back in the top two corners, if that makes sense. That way it's all the same thickness around the whole frame and nothing is tilted or anything like that. Next, I found an old gold chain necklace that I'm pretty sure I got from a relative as a kid, and I know that because it has a little horse charm on it, and I had a whole obsessive horse girl stage as a kid, so it makes sense. But anyway, I undid the clasp from the necklace and looped it through one of the loops. I just attached the frame and then through the other one, and with a little finessing, I redid the clasps together and decided to leave the little horse charm on it because it's cute cute and why not? Then I found a nicer gold colored tack and stuck it straight into my wall like the savage I am. No measuring or anything, I kind of just eyeballed it and went for it, and then I pushed the pin flush with the wall. And all this was hard to do while recording with my other hand, by the way, but then I hung the chain on the pin, and that's that. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching my process of turning a Dollar Tree frame into a cute DIY frame painting. If you found this inspiring or entertaining, don't forget to leave a like on this video and subscribe for more art and animal related content. I upload a new video here every Friday, and I would love to have you become a creative critter with me and follow along on my YouTube journey. Also, if you made it this far, leave me a comment and let me know if you like this type of DIY art video and what I should paint on the other frames that I got from the Dollar Tree. I mean, I do have a pretty empty wall that's just asking for more art to be put on it. So thank you guys so much for watching, stay creative, and I'll see you in next Friday's video. After literally